Running a country like Kenya demands expertise in economics, healthcare, education, and foreign policy. But Kenyan politicians have often placed childish obstacles on the path of the country's transformation. In the midst of the abductions epidemic, their response to the questions raised have been quite sluggish. Their capacity to oversight wanting, and the commitment to the country's democratic cause always questionable. On the bench tonight, we ask whether the direction of travel is right and will be made up by Professor Lukweya Tuoli, the Dean, Aga Khan University College, Willis Otieno, an advocate of the High Court, Javas Bigambo, governance and political commentator, and they will be joined by Sheila Olang, who is a development economist. My colleague Jeff is on a small break. He will be back. I'll be running the show. And here are the top stories tonight.
I hear my brothers and sisters say, let Ruto go, then we will figure out. To me, that sounds like the wash conmanship.
You lack credible alternatives. President William Ruto pushes back on opposition pressure and defends record in office.
He's a very confused person, extremely confused.
Make up your mind. Former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua mocks President Ruto's varying positions on anti-government protests. Police pursue staff member at Chiromo Hospital Braeside branch over the murder of Susan Njoki at the facility.
Kulingana na victims family ambao wamezungumza siku ya leo ni kuwa tunatarajia tupate zaidi ya 47
dead or alive. 6 children fear dead as human rights groups claim more than 40 people may have been secretly buried at Kwabinzaro village within Chakama Ranch. Njoki Shege is our sign language interpreter. In a spirited defense of his tenure, President William Ruto has today described himself as an agent of destiny and change, telling of his critics pushing the one-term agenda. The president said he should be judged at the end of his term, saying his opponents have so far not offered no clear alternative plan. Speaking today in Nairobi County, the head of state said just like his predecessors, he will go when his time comes. Emmanuel Toh has that report.
The bell-ringing ceremony to commemorate the listing of the Lindsay asset-backed security at the Nairobi Securities Exchange set the stage for the head of state to launch strong defense of his tenure as president, a tenure which has lately come under some withering attacks from his critics.
I hear my brothers and sisters say, let Ruto go, then we will figure out. To me, that sounds like the wash conmanship. One term, Kasongo, Ruto must go, is not enough. Just like those who were there before me, my time will come and I will go.
Pushing back on the consistent one-term calls from the opposition, President Ruto touted his record, saying his opponents had none.
What are your reasons for this Ruto must go? Because the more I listen, the more it is sloganeering. It's not about a plan, not about an alternative plan. If you seriously have a plan that does better on creating jobs than I have, that does better on education than I have, you should be bold enough to tell us.
President Ruto then picked out one of his critics, the retired Chief Justice David Maraga, who is also eyeing his seat in the 2027 presidential race.
Now I listened to him say, Kenya is a failed state. Now I ask myself, so for 40 years, you have been working in a failed state? So you want to be president of a failed state?
The head of state, who has come under intense pressure from the opposition, said he should be judged fairly and at the end of his term.
The critics may say I am wrong. The cynics may say I am lying, and the naysayers may even say I am mad. But what if they are wrong? And they are. What if I am an agent of destiny for the transformation of our nation, whose promise has been delayed for far too long?
President Ruto also responded to critics who accuse him of failing to deliver on his electoral promises.
Some have accused my administration of over-promising or taking on too many challenges at once. This was deliberate to adjust the bar upwards. We have made peace with mediocrity for far too long.
Emmanuel Toh, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Across the Atlantic, and former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua says President William Ruto does not understand his presidential assignment nor comprehend the challenges facing the country. Gachagua says the head of state has been giving conflicting explanations on the nation's problems, appearing unsettled and failing to offer concrete remedial measures. Melita Oletenges has that report.
Former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who is on a tour of America, accused the president of confusion and deflecting rather than addressing concerns raised by the youth. His remarks came days after President William Ruto told parents of Gen Z that the police are not responsible for raising their children.
He's a very confused person, extremely confused. When the Gen Z's protest started in 2024, he stayed after another 4 weeks, he said it's for the foundation. Do you remember? The other day, he said it's a church. He said the church, you know, they are the ones who incited people, church leaders, nini. He went back again, he said it's the opposition. This Sunday, he said it's the parents. Yeah? He said it's poor parenting. William Ruto, please, can you make up your mind? What ails your country?
As leaders allied to the government back home continue to label recent Gen Z demonstrations as politically instigated by Gachagua and his cronies, Gachagua says the leaders are trying to run from the real issues.
Instead of listening to the Gen Zs, the issues they are raising, abductions, extrajudicial killings, corruption, misappropriation of public resources, President says, no. These people have been incited by Rigiji and Uhuru. You know, the president does not know the problem in Kenya. He has given 7 reasons so far.
Gachagua dismisses accusations of political incitement leveled against him and opposition leaders as a tactic to delegitimize the Gen Z protests, pointing to the government's failure to address the core issues.
And it's simply because he doesn't want to accept that he has lost it and there is a problem, and address the problem instead of saying the boys and girls are being incited. If he was honest to himself and listened to the problems the young people are raising on behalf of the country, we will not be where we are.
Meanwhile, Dorcas Rigathi, the former deputy president's spouse, has told off leaders making demeaning remarks about her.
When he gives me to speak, he's not giving me to speak because I don't know, I sit. How can you sit on a man like this? This is a man who is causing a whole nation not to sleep.
The former deputy president was in Draycott, Massachusetts on Tuesday as he continues with his Meet the Diaspora community in America. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
Dagoretti DCI detectives probing the murder of Susan Njoki at Chiromo Hospital Braeside branch have launched a manhunt for a female staff member who disappeared 2 days after her body was found. Detectives camped at the facility on Wednesday, questioning staff members who are on duty on the fateful day. Police now believe the missing woman is a key person of interest in the case and have so far retrieved CCTV footage capturing Susan Njoki's final moments before she was strangled to death at the facility. Here is Gatete Njoroge.
Hours after a post-mortem confirmed that Susan Njoki died from strangulation, DCI detectives from Dagoretti returned to the Chiromo Hospital Group, the scene of the crime. It is here that Njoki was admitted on July 14th, only to be found dead 24 hours later. For more than 8 hours, detectives from Kabete Police Station questioned staff members, from those who picked her from her home in Kileleshwa to those who attended to her in a shared hospital room, and others who were on duty on the fateful day. Police, keen to establish the exact circumstances surrounding her death, also spent hours reviewing and retrieving CCTV footage from the hospital. The footage shows the moment Susan Njoki was admitted to the facility, which handles patients with mental health conditions, and traces how she spent her final hours before her death. Detectives have now launched a manhunt for a female staff member at the facility, who reportedly went into hiding last Thursday. She is said to have been among those on duty when Susan Njoki was found dead, and investigators believe she is a key person of interest in the case, one the family has demanded be subjected to a thorough and transparent probe.
We of course expect criminal proceedings to be initiated as against the culpable individual.
Other persons of interest in the case are Njoki's widower Alois Ngure and her attending psychiatrist Dr. Onyancha. The two were arrested and released on police cash bail last week after recording statement. Chiromo Hospital Group Chairman Dr. Frank Njenga, in a statement, says they are committed in ensuring the truth surrounding the circumstances of her death is established in an open and transparent manner. Dr. Njenga, who acknowledged Njoki's advocacy and dedication to mental health care, added that the facility is undertaking internal introspection and a review of its operational and procedural protocols in the wake of the incident. Gatete Njoroge, Citizen TV.
Interior National Administration Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen now says the government will not back down from charging individuals who commit crimes during demonstrations with terrorism offences. Speaking in Eldoret during the launch of the Jukwaa la Usalama security engagement in Uasin Gishu County, Murkomen faulted the Law Society of Kenya's President Faith Odhiambo for, in his words, siding with criminals at the expense of citizens who lost property worth millions of shillings during the Sabasaba and June 25th anniversary demonstrations. Seth Olale reports from Eldoret.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen says the government has sufficient evidence linking all 71 suspects charged with terrorism-related offences to crimes committed during the Sabasaba and June 25th anniversary protests. Murkomen maintained that the state will not relent in prosecuting and seeking convictions for the suspects, despite stiff opposition from the Law Society of Kenya, human rights groups and the opposition, who have dismissed the charges as excessive and politically motivated. LSK has criticized the move, accusing the government of weaponizing terrorism laws to stifle dissent, and has vowed to challenge the charges in court.
Burning supermarkets, looting people's businesses. All those people are properly defined in the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
In faulting the LSK president for opposing the terrorism charges, CS Murkomen warned LSK against pressurizing or intimidating the judiciary into granting lenient bond terms to suspects accused of violent acts during the protests.
On this one, she is damn wrong. Yeah, she is actually on the wrong side of history. She needs to quickly salvage her reputation by siding with criminals and terrorists and trying to defend them.
While presiding over the Jukwaa la Usalama Security Assessment Baraza in Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County, CS Murkomen accused the opposition of double standards in its stance on the application of the Prevention of the Terrorism Act against violent protesters.
I totally disagree with those who want to make it lighter. They want to make it look cheap.
As the debate on the implementation of the Prevention of Terrorism Act escalates, the Ministry of Interior maintains that anyone found culpable causing injury, murder, and destruction of property is liable to charges related to terrorism. Seth Olale, Citizen TV, Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County.
The Wanguru law courts in the county of Kirinyaga have revised the cash bail for 10 accused persons who are unable to raise 50,000 Kenya shillings. The court lowered the bail by 10,000 shillings, an amount that the defense still felt was too high for the poor families. It comes even as 3 people who were charged with stealing items worth 130 million shillings during the demonstrations pleaded not guilty at the law courts in Nyeri County. Laura Otieno now reports from the corridors of justice on the cases regarding the recent wave of demonstrations across different counties.
Following the destruction and theft of property worth 130 million shillings from Naivas supermarket in Nyeri, 3 accused persons pleaded not guilty to 4 charges leveled against them. David Karaoke, Jude Kingori and Zipporah Njeri appeared before Senior Principal Magistrate Caroline Obara, who slated the matter for mention on 31st of July.
Yes, we shall maintain the bond terms given. Okay.
Meanwhile, 10 people who are arraigned at the Wanguru Law Court were handed reduced bail terms after they failed to raise the initial 50,000 shillings bail. The 10 were among 18 people who are facing charges of unlawful assembly during the Sabasaba protests.
That is money that most of my clients, as of today, they are unable to fill up. They can't pay up, for it's still high. These are people of humble means, and the court should at least have taken that into consideration.
In Nairobi, a Kibera Law Court lifted the requirement for 3 defendants to report to the police station twice a week. Mark Amiani, Mutunge Mwangi, and John Mulunge faced charges of organizing and participating in the June 25th protests. The prosecution was granted 30 days to complete investigations. And in Kisumu County, activist Boniface Akach was released after the court ruled that he had no case to answer. Akach was facing charges of obstruction during the anti-finance bill protests in 2024.
I want to appreciate the Lady Justice Nyigei for ensuring that her court has not been used to victimize or to suppress the kind of dissent that we are trying to express.
Laura Otieno, Citizen TV.
Tonight, fears that 6 children from one family among dozens who have died in what appears to be a fresh wave of the Shakahola massacre. A close relative who spoke to the children's parents and the leaders suspected to be behind the second round of killings says the parents themselves confirmed the deaths. Human rights activists now claim more than 40 people could have been killed and secretly buried in Kwabinzaro since March this year. Brenda Wanga has that report.
They survived the first Shakahola massacre, but this time they weren't so lucky. Flora, aged 15, Mary, 14, Christine, 10, Shadrach, 6, Esther, 4, and Tony, 1-year-old, are all feared dead, their bodies believed to have been buried in a settlement within Kwabinzaro village inside Chakama Ranch. The 6 were part of a family of 8 that had initially been rescued from Shakahola in 2023 and relocated to Siaya, where they had been staying for the last 2 years. But in March this year, Jairus, the head of the family, lied to his extended family that he had been offered employment in Bondo. Alongside his entire nuclear family, instead, he boarded a bus with his wife and children, heading back to Kilifi to rejoin the controversial religious sect led by Paul Mackenzie. The parents, Jairus and Lillian Ateno, are amongst the 4 people that were rescued and later arrested from the forest on Saturday. Now, a close relative who spoke to Citizen TV on condition of anonymity says he managed to talk to the couple who are currently in police custody. What they told him is chilling.
Kwa kusema ukweli watoto wamekufa kwa sababu alinikonfirmia yeye mwenyewe na mdomo yake. Nilipomuuliza nilipompata hapo kwa police station, nilipewa nafasi ya kuongea naye, nikamuuliza watoto wako wapi. na aliniambia watoto wamekufa wote na wamezikwa.
Jairus also revealed to the relative that despite Paul Mackenzie being behind bars and on trial, his cult remains active, luring followers to their deaths right under the noses of law enforcement.
Mackenzie yuko gerezani na anaoperate nje. Ana wafuasi wake huko nje kwa sababu tukiwa hapo na DCI hapo ofisini niliweza kumuuliza ukitaka kufa ama ukitaka kufunga unafanya nini? Anasema ya kwamba wakati umepangiwa msituni, wakati unaelekea kufa, saa ile unaanza kufunga, Mackenzie mwenyewe ndio lazima akuombee kwanza. Na anakuombea kupitia kwa simu ambayo anapiga akiwa gerezani.
Serikali itafute njia ya kudhibiti utumizi wa simu, haswa kwa wale ambao walikuwa wameshtakiwa na ile Shakahola 1, kwa sababu tumepata habari hata kupitia familia hii kwamba Mackenzie na wale ambao walikuwa nao accomplices wake bado wanaendelea kueneza injili hii ya watu kufunga na kufa kupitia simu.
Human rights activists say the number of those who've already died in this phase of the massacre is worrying.
Kulingana na victims family ambao wamezungumza siku ya leo, ni kuwa tunatarajia tupate zaidi ya 47 bodies katika hii ambayo tunaiita Shakahola 2.
Indeed, those who live near the scene of crime say that the estimate is not far off the mark.
Tueleza hata vile ambavyo walikuwa wanachimba makaburi, nasema wanatumia upanga tu, chimba tu shimo tu kidogo, ili mradi tu mwili huo unaweza kuzibwa, wewe haonekani huko juu. Na baada ya kuzikwa anapanda konge hapo juu, alama ya kwamba kesho tena labda kama mkuja na mtu mwingine asiwezi kuchimba hapo tena.
The government is in the process of getting warrants to search the area with the aim of establishing the true magnitude of these acts it has described as religious radicalization. 11 people have so far been arrested over the cult-like activities, and they're being held in remand until the 22nd of August when they will be heard in court. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
Learning institutions are set to close earlier than planned owing to financial crisis facing the institutions. Head teachers say they can no longer operate owing to the failure by the government to disperse capitation fee. In the meantime, the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, KUPPET, has warned that parents will be required to pay extra school fees starting next term to cushion learning institutions against the funding crisis. Mary Moki with the details of that report.
For nearly a year now, tensions have been simmering between the Ministry of Education and teachers, with teachers' unions consistently accusing the government of failing to release funds meant for the operations of public schools on time. And now the continued cash crisis threatens to push the education sector to a critical breaking point.
Schools must be ready for parents to pay for their children next term, because we cannot have back and forth kind of communication from the ministry.
At the center of the crisis is student capitation, a crucial financial provision by the government that enables schools to function day to day. These funds have been delayed, slashed, or not disbursed at all. School heads now say they are barely getting by, and the little they receive is a drop in the ocean compared to what is required.
Meaning at one point, the schooling system will collapse, given that in the previous years we also have undisbursed funds.
It means that this time they have not sent any capitation to schools, are merely coping with the circumstance, coping.
Several school principals who spoke to Citizen TV but requested for anonymity for fear of reprisals say the situation is so dire some schools have shut down earlier than scheduled owing to their inability to afford food, staff salaries, or even basic supplies like chalk. This comes a day after the Education CS announced that the government will not release any further capitation funds until the next term.
However, we've not been able to do the actual amount that is required, and we are working with Treasury to ensure that the shortfall that was not released is released, and come third term, the full amount will be released.
It's a structured way by the Ministry of Education to continuously defund the system, and they must come out to speak on this. If they are not responsible, then Treasury is responsible. As Parliament, we actually did work on the budget. And we gave out money for Ministry of Education.
Jana nimesikia serikali inatangaza kwamba hawana pesa ya kupeleka kwa mashule yetu. Sasa kama hizi pesa ya shule ndio imetumika kutembea kupanda mandege, na kupeleka michango mingi kwa mikono kwa wananchi na mashule yetu haina pesa.
The free education program was meant to bring equality during the late President Mwai Kibaki's administration by ensuring every child had a chance at learning. But today, that vision seems to be fading fast. Mary Mwoki, Citizen TV.
Time for a break here on the broadcast. When we come back, we have 3 stories to run you through before the bench that will tonight discuss the cross-Atlantic fight, the moral high ground that the Kenyan politicians often find it hard to be at any given time, and the dragging into the political debate of women, the characterization, the language itself, the IBC, and the voices of young Kenyans. They'll be made up by Professor Lukoe Atuoli, who is the Dean, Aga Khan University Medical College, Willis Otieno, an advocate, Javas Bigambo, governance and political commentator, and Sheila Olang, development economist. And of course, we will sample your feedback and the questions that you'll be sending here. In the meantime, here is what's coming up. Security breach at Kibera Law Courts as hardcore convict escapes shortly before his sentencing hearing. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching JKL. Kiharu Member of Parliament Ndindi Nyoro has cautioned that the 44 billion Kenya shillings Lindsay Finko's bond meant to fund the construction of Talanta Stadium is a new secret way of burdening Kenyans with expensive debt. Nyoro, who is also the former Budget and Appropriations Committee chairperson, says Kenyans will end up paying up to 100 billion Kenya shillings for the loan. Stephen Leto has that report.
The construction of the 60,000 capacity Talanta Sports Complex is now at the center of a funding controversy with the latest listings of a bond by Lindsay Finko. The securitization fundraising model has been roped in to finance the construction of the stadium that will host African Cup of Nations Championship in 2027. Former Budget Chair Ndindi Nyoro says President William Ruto is plunging the country into deeper debt. Nyoro says the securitization model that the government has embarked on is more costly.
Now the government is coming up with these kind of facilities so that we do not seem like our debt is growing, whereas we are basically having another secret book of debt. One secret book was fuel levy. The second secret book, of course, is now this one for Talanta.
The Kiharu lawmaker says the 44.7 billion shillings bond will cost the taxpayer hundreds of billions of shillings in future. The bond has been pegged on expected revenues from the Talanta Stadium in the hope it becomes an income-generating project once complete.
The maturity of the bond in the next 15 years, Kenya will have paid interest rates of 100 billion for a loan of 44.8 billion Kenya shillings. And I'm here wondering, if that cannot make us agree as Kenyans, then what would? Now you are making a generation which is to come for the next 15 years to be born with a price tag of a loan of a money they actually don't know where it went.
President Ruto told the gathering at NSC that the new venture joins the pioneering innovations such as the government-to-government G2G fuel supply program and the fuel levy-backed securitization that will see the government raise 175 billion shillings to finance stall road projects.
And I can tell you without breaking of an eye that these kind of mechanisms you see, the experienced officers in the National Treasury do not even support it.
The government exuding confidence that its latest debt instruments through the NSC will reinforce the country's ability to finance critical infrastructure from domestic capital and reduce dependency on external borrowing. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
Now hear this. Police are investigating a puzzling security breach after a convicted robber identified as Alex Kibisu vanished from the Kibera Law Courts where he had appeared for another robbery with violence case. Questions on just how the prisoner in handcuffs slipped past all the security officers and managed to climb a perimeter wall and vanish continue to mount. The escape, which occurred around midday today, has left prison officers and court officials scrambling for answers.
Inmate identified as Alex Kibisu dramatically fled the court's holding cells by leaping over the rear perimeter wall while still in handcuffs. Kibisu, who is currently serving a 20-year sentence at Committee Prison, was in court facing an additional charge relating to a November 30th of 2023 armed robbery in Langata, where he allegedly shot and injured a victim, Duncan Shiemi, during a robbery incident at Akiba Estate in Langata. The rear wall behind the court cell, ordinarily monitored and secure, is believed to be the exact location where Kibisu made his bold escape. Locals claim it leads directly into the maze-like structures of Kibera slums, making pursuit difficult. Police units from prison have reportedly pitched camp in the informal settlements of Kibera as they try to track down Kibisu. Investigators believe the fugitive may have used a passage through the densely populated slum to disappear without detection. As at the time of publication of this story, Kibisu remains at large and no official comment has been made by the prison administration. Law enforcement agencies have intensified the search as public scrutiny builds over possible lapses in supervision and accountability. Alex Kibisu was convicted of a robbery with violence and was sentenced to life imprisonment. He appealed, and on 8th of April this year, the sentence was reduced to 20 years imprisonment on each of the 3 counts. The sentences were to run concurrently from 11th December 2023. The incident has raised serious questions about security protocols at the Kibera law courts. Just how did Kibisu get past 4 separate security checkpoints manned by armed guards? Why has the prison department not yet issued an official statement? And what measures are being taken to prevent future breaches? Questioning of prison police officers who escorted him to court is still ongoing. Ode Francis, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
And it's exactly 10 days to the African Nations Championship, a tournament that will be hosted by the 3 East African countries of Uganda, Tanzania and Kenya. It is the next big sporting event in Kenya since All Africa Games of 1987. On Chan 101 tonight, our sports editor Michael Kinye gives an explainer on what the tournament is all about.
Well, the Africa Cup of Nations is what many Kenyans know about, but not so many people know about Chan. That is the reason why we are explaining to you today what Chan is all about. So if we can start, let's look at Africa Nations Championships. Chan, that is the name of the tournament. The name of the tournament is Championnat d'Afrique des Nations, or Chan. That's why it's called Chan, because this is in French, the Africa Nations Championship in English. That is the name of the tournament that we'll be hosting here in Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania. So if you look at the first editions in 2009, 8 teams contested the first tournament. There were only 8 of them. Second to 6th edition, we had 16 teams. Then since 2012, since 2022, I beg your pardon, 18 teams have been playing in the tournament. This time, we don't have 18 teams, but 19 teams. We look at those teams, how they're distributed in the preceding slides. And then when you look at the history of the Chan competition, it was created in 2007 during a CAF Executive Committee in Johannesburg, South Africa. And this is because the tournament is only for home-based players. What do we mean by this? These are players that play in their home leagues, like in Kenya, for example. Unless you're playing in the FKF Premier League, you're playing in the Division 2 National Super League, NSL, or Division 1 and Division 2, you are eligible to play in the tournament. Anybody else who's playing in a tournament in a league outside Kenya, that is Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, or Michael Olunga, the captain of the Harambee Stars, playing in Qatar, they are not eligible to play in this tournament. So that is where we are with the history of the tournament. Then we look at the aim is to give these players a chance to represent their national teams, simply because the top level players in every country they play either in Europe or they're playing in leagues outside their country. So to give these players that play in their homegrown nations a chance to be seen and to also play for the national team, that's why this tournament was created. So the tournament also promotes home leagues. For example, people will get to know about FKFPL. When a player scores or a player shines, let's say Gor Mahia, AFC Leopards, Tusker FC, Police FC, they will be known and the league will get prominence out of that. Then, so what's the difference between CHAN and AFCON? Like we say, CHAN for players in the domestic leagues like FKF, PL, and National Super League. AFCON for all the other players. Olunga can play in AFCON, he cannot play in CHAN. The players in camp right now playing for CHAN can play in the AFCON as well. So that's the difference between these two tournaments. Then we look at the hosts. Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. How did we end up having 3 host countries? We look at that. And it is because the opening ceremony will be on the 2nd of August. 2nd of August, we'll have the opening ceremony in Tanzania. Tanzania will be playing Burkina Faso in the first game. Then the closing ceremony will be on August 30th. This one will be at Kasarani. Moi International Sports Center Kasarani, where Harambee Stars are playing all their matches, is where the closing ceremony will be. Let's hope that we'll be going to cheer Harambee Stars in that finals match. Then initial dates were 1st of February to the 28th of February, but the tournament had to be postponed. Why? Because we had infrastructure delays in all the 3 countries. Kenya were not ready with the stadia, Uganda and Tanzania as well. But now all infrastructure is ready. We are ready to play from the 2nd of August. Then we also had teams that pulled out. Algeria, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, and Gabon. They pulled out of CHAN despite having qualified. So CHAN had to do qualifying tournaments again so that these slots can be filled. All of them are filled as of now. Then the tournament is a dress rehearsal for AFCON 2027. Why is it a dress rehearsal for AFCON 2027? On September 27, 2023, the Pamoja bid of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, the East African countries, won the rights to host AFCON in 2027. So that's why CHAN 2024, which is being played in 2025, is a dress rehearsal for this particular tournament, that is AFCON 2027. Then the other bids in that bidding process were by Senegal, Algeria, Morocco, and Botswana. They were just bidding as individual countries, but the East African bid of Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya was the Pamoja bid. The cost of hosting paid to CAF, we paid $13 million as Kenya, which is 1.6 billion Kenya shillings. This is what we get when we bid to host such a tournament. We have to pay for it. So 18 teams divided into 4 groups. There are 19 teams actually. 5 in Group A in Kenya, 5 in Group B in Tanzania, 5 in Group C in Uganda, and 4 in Group D that will be played in Zanzibar. Remember, this group in Zanzibar was to be played in Kenya, the Nyayo National Stadium, but because we didn't have enough training grounds around the Nyayo National Stadium, then Zanzibar, the Aman Stadium, was given a chance to host Group D matches. So winners will receive close to $500 million Kenya shillings. That money has been increased beginning the CHAN tournament for this year. So tomorrow, we'll be looking at all these groups, that is Group A, who's playing there, Group B, Group C, and Group D, as we continue giving you one-on-one information on CHAN 2024. Back to you, Ayub.
And more details with Mike and the sports team ahead of the tournament, and more explanation on then what happens next. Many thanks. The M-Pesa Sokoni Caravan continued with its tour of the Mount Kenya region as part of celebrations marking 18 years of M-Pesa services in the country. Safaricom using the opportunity to educate the public on various strategies for economic empowerment. The initiative is made possible through the partnership between Safaricom and the Royal Media Services.
For the 3rd day running, the caravan pitched tent in the Mount Kenya region. Residents of Chaka, Nanyuki, and Timau got a chance to join in the celebrations. They were entertained and received giveaways as part of the activities. marking 18 years of M-Pesa service in Kenya.
As M-Pesa, it's an ecosystem that has grown to enable Kenyans across the whole country. We have our products, we have free transactions for anything less than 100 shillings.
M-Pesa iko mkononi mwa watu. Tumeweza kuwezesha mwananchi wa kawaida kutumia mwenzake pesa, kumaanisha kama mtu ako na bili ya hospitali for instance, unaweza tumia mwenzako pesa.
Meanwhile, in Meru town, more than 350 farmers and entrepreneurs gathered at the Sapphire Connect Forum, a platform designed to help business owners scale their enterprises through digital solutions that enhance knowledge in agribusiness.
We were collecting milk manually using milk cards and journals, but today we are doing it in a digital way, where we are buying milk from our farmers using this DigiFarm app. And this app has enabled us to save on milk.
One of the things that makes Sapphire Connect different is the fact that we know we are not necessarily the experts in all those areas, but what we do have is the right tools. So we've exposed a lot of M-Pesa products that can help them in their journey. So things like ZD to help them savings and investment, Pochi and Tasi Pochi.
On Thursday, the caravan will be in Meru County.
Time for another break here on the broadcast. Coming up next is sports and business and sports. And later on the bench here is what's coming up. On JKL tonight, we discuss the state of play and the road to 2027. Time for business. Kenya's capital markets have recorded a milestone with the listing of 44.9 billion shillings infrastructure-backed security at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. The transaction led by Lindsay Finco is being hailed as a major leap in mobilizing private capital for public infrastructure projects. The funds will go towards the construction of the Talanta Stadium, which is set to be completed in time for the Africa Cup of Nations Championships in 2027, co-hosted by Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania. Here's Jasmine Wamboi with the details of that story.
Is this trading that's going on at the moment?
Lindsay Finco has successfully listed the Lindsay 003 infrastructure asset-backed security, one of the largest deals of its kind in Kenya's history. This demonstrating a growing appetite for sophisticated financial instruments in the local market.
Now, this is going to be trading for some time because it's not been done in East Africa. The last time this was done, Your Excellency, was the Gauteng train project in South Africa. So as a country, we are very, very proud that we've been able to pull this together.
The listing, marked by a ceremonial bell ringing at the NSE, signals growing investor confidence in structured finance as a tool for infrastructure development.
And Your Excellency, I want to announce also that we have had an equity listing last week. We have an equity listing again tomorrow. And the market has traded the highest value of bonds in recent history.
The strong recovery of the NSE, with market capitalization now standing at 2.5 trillion, reflects the soundness and consistency of our economic policies. Some of the choices we have made have not been easy, and at times not popular. But they have been necessary, they have been strategic and forward-looking. These decisions have helped us stabilize the economy, restore investor confidence, and lay a firm foundation for growth into the future.
The security pools future cash flows from infrastructure assets and repackages them into tradable instruments, allowing institutional and retail investors to participate in long-term infrastructure financing. This approach also helps reduce reliance on traditional public funding at a time when government is cash-strapped.
Your Excellency, the government which you lead is increasingly turning to innovative financing mechanisms to fund large-scale infrastructure and public service projects. Some of the structures that we have earmarked for the deployment of private sector participation in public financing include asset-backed financing, otherwise known as securitization of public assets. 2 is privatization, And 3 is public-private partnerships, among others.
Market players see the listing as a sign of maturity in Kenya's financial markets.
Our goal is clear: to onboard 9 million active retail investors by the year 2029 through strategic interventions that address market access, financial literacy, and generally improving the overall economy.
Jasmine Wamboi, Citizen TV.
Electric mobility company Basigo has launched a pilot program to test electric buses on long-distance public transport routes. The 6-month program will run in partnership with 4NT Sacco and Manchester Travellers Coach Sacco. The Saccos will deploy electric vans on popular routes such as Thika to Nairobi and Nyahururu to Nairobi. Each van can cover up to 300 kilometers on a single charge and takes about 1.5 hours to recharge. Charging stations have been installed in Nyahururu and Thika, and the company says it plans to roll out over 1,000 electric vehicles on long-distance routes if the piloting process meets the expectations.
You cannot preach climate if the owner of the vehicle is not making money. So we are sure that the owners of these vehicles, SACCOs like 4NT, will actually be making between 20 and 30% more than what they're doing on their diesel vehicles. As you can see, what's happening with fuel prices, and we've got an e-mobility tariff which the government started 2 or 3 years ago. So therefore, the running costs on a daily basis are much lower on an electric vehicle, and it's also green energy, and it's also healthier.
Hii biashara unajua ni hesabu. Mafuta ikienda juu na stima nayo ndio hii, tunataka kujaribu tuone tukiwa na stima biashara itakuwa namna gani. Na nafikiri nini hatua kubwa tumeanza. Na ile kampuni tumeshikana naye ya Basigo, nafikiri sijui kama wataweza kumiti ile supply kwa sababu the demand is so high. Everybody want to go green.
Farmers in Kenya's leading rice-growing region, Mwea, in the county of Kirinyaga, are embracing a new cultivation method that promises more rice with less effort. It's called the Ratoon technology, and it's being championed by researchers from the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, KALRO. And as Dennis Otieno tells us on this week's Smart Farm, the innovation could play a key role in closing the gap between rice production and the country's growing demand.
Rice is a staple food in many Kenyan households. But the country still relies heavily on imports, with only about 20% of local demand met through domestic production.
For Kenya, we are not self-sufficient in rice. We are importing 80% of what we require in this country. Currently, like for example, in 2024, we produce about 183,000 metric tons of milled rice, of which the demand was way above 1 million metric tons.
One of the main constraints to boosting rice output is the limited availability of certified seed, an issue KALRO says it is urgently working to address.
Whereas we require about 1,000 metric tons of rice seed in the country, we can only be able to produce about 100 to 200 metric tons of certified rice seed. And the reason why we are not meeting the demand is because, for one, we do not have what it requires when it comes to infrastructure to be able to handle big volumes of the certified rice seed.
To bridge the gap, KALRO researchers are turning to innovation, one of which is Ratoon technology. It allows farmers to grow a second crop from the same rice plant without replanting.
After harvesting the first crop of rice, they only need to apply fertilizer, and then they'll be able to harvest from Ratoon. We've just completed the trials on the ratooning, and is one of the technologies that we are encouraging, and is very useful for the farmers. They are able to harvest as much as, say, 80% of the original.
In a nutshell, the Ratoon technology in rice production is a farming method where a second crop is achieved without using new seedlings. Instead of uprooting the rice plant, the farmer leaves the lower part of the stem and root system in the field. With proper management, the plant regenerates and produces new shoots, which mature and give a second harvest.
And I think this is one of its own innovation, which really will be able to reduce the need to plow and grow a new crop. We have several varieties which we have produced, which are high yielding, which are drought tolerant.
Ratoon technology also has other advantages. It reduces labor, land preparation and irrigation costs, boosts total yield per unit area over a season, and is also environmentally friendly as it disturbs the soil less. With a push for certified seed and adoption of ratoon rice farming, researchers say Kenya could soon produce more rice at a lower cost. Dennis Otieno, Smart Farm.
Time for some sports, and Harambee Stars head coach Benny McCarthy says the team made a collective decision to pull out of the Sekafa Four Nations tournament that's ongoing in Tanzania. There were no training sessions or matches, with the coach saying the conditions were not favorable. The Stars rejected the official team hotel and the training ground that they say would have put players at risk of picking injuries so close to the CHAN tournament. Coach McCarthy added that in the end, the tournament will have not benefited the team, as they were to play 3 matches and have 2 training sessions only in 1 week. The team today trained at the Nyayo Stadium for the first time in 3 days.
Hakuna affect imekam, spirits kwa camp, sit ko ready, as long as hiyo ilikuwa preparation ya CHAN. So si bado preparation inaendelea. So we are on, we are up to it. Task iko hapa mbele ni CHAN. Focus iko tu kwa CHAN. Hakuna kitu imeshift.
Ni hao wenzangu tu wako tumetoka different teams. So as a player unafaa catch up haraka na wenzako. Juu si amko timu moja. Na mimi kama mimi nikipata chance ya kucheza tasaidia timu yangu.
I'm lucky that most of the midfielders called up for the national team may play now at some point. So na feel hiyo jelly haiko mbaya sana, because at some point tumecheza nao, so niko happy sana, nasema niko lucky to have players nimecheza nao at some point. Yeah.
The listing of the Lindsay 3 infrastructure asset-backed security raised the funds that are being used in the construction of Kenya's biggest sports facility, the 60,000-seater Talanta Sports Stadium that will co-host the AFCON 2027 tournament. President William Ruto says this is the first mega sports project in the country in more than 40 years.
The proceeds from this listing will directly support the construction of the Talanta Sports City Stadium, a compelling example of how financial markets can accelerate national transformation. The Talanta Sports City marks Kenya's first large-scale, purpose-built international stadium project in more than 40 years. The last comparable undertaking was the construction of Moi International Sports Center Kasarani, completed in 1987, ahead of the All Africa Games.
The construction of the Bohongo Stadium in Kakamega County is back on track after the contractor was paid part of the money owed. The construction has been delayed due to the stalemate in the payment methods. Sports CS Salim Buria says the issue has now been resolved and the stadium will be ready for the AFCON 2027.
Part of the stalemate was a pending bill of 627 million by the county government, and we agreed that the county government will be settling that one, as we also manage the 1.5 billion part of the spending that we'll do in Kakamega. So Bukungu now, the contractor is on the ground. In fact, I just saw a certificate last week and we have paid, and therefore he should continue. And we will be monitoring, we will hasten implementation so that this becomes part of the AFCON grounds in 2027.